Good morning and welcome. You're listening live to Heart, a program which aims to help you understand and to become your loving self at KMET Live. I'm Dr. Mitra Rashidian. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and a certified sexologist. I'm here along with
Dr. Robert Jaffe.
Yes.
I am also a licensed marriage and family therapist, certified hypnotherapist, here to welcome you to Heart. And we're here to share with you some of what we've learned over many years of study and practice about how to feel more loving and joyful every day of our lives.
Yes, it is. And we would like to invite you to phone in, call us with your comments, questions, during this time that we pretty much are self-isolating or basically social distancing. I mean, there are so many different terms that people use, but ultimately they all because of one sheer aim that we have, and that is to keep ourselves and our loved ones safe from the pandemic that's going on globally. And we appreciate and value any contributions that everybody's making throughout this difficult time. Please call us at 951-922-3532. You can also visit us at our YouTube, which is heart-2-heart.online/YouTube. And we would like to, welcome you to this program. Thank you for giving us your hour. And here we go. So, Dr. Robert.
Yes.
We have been talking about communication in particular. Why are we focusing on that? Because number one, it's such a broad idea and concept that no matter how much we talk about communication, we can't really get to the end part of it. That's how vast and this is how important it is. And during this time when people have been apart for a variety of reasons, going to work, going to school, so they didn't have that much time of spending together except a very, an hour maybe in the morning, early morning, before going to, each person go to what they need to do on a daily basis. And then towards the evening afternoon, where people went back home and then started to do their routine and then go to sleep. So pretty much there was a big gap of communication between family members and during the day, and many of us kind of accepted that culture as our norm of life, and we did rely on other people to occupy us whether we went to work, so we had work responsibility, we went to school, so school officials took care of us, right? But now everybody's home facing each other and doing the same thing, and therefore level of expectations and everything is kind of skyrocket. It's up there, and then we see that people are, from what we hear, are more in conflict of how to communicate in the best way, where they don't get into arguments, where they can do problem solving. People are actually really struggling with that because they seldom have that practice of being together this much.
I
For
agree.
this one.
I agree.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's a new challenge, and
It's a new normal.
well, it's okay for the moment, yeah. But it's a new challenge, and with every challenge comes an opportunity. So this is an opportunity for us to learn how to communicate with people and with our loved ones in a new way. And that new way is called communicating with love.
Right.
So there's two ways that we're communicating always. One is the content. So we're talking about a baseball game, we're talking about making dinner, we're talking about any number of topics. So we're communicating content. And then we're always communicating feelings. And we, as human beings, we pick up on the other person's feelings, generally not just by the words that they use, but also by their tone of voice, by their eye contact or lack of eye contact, by their body language. And it's important for us to recognize that we are communicating at the level of feelings. And I just want to say that there's a quote that I love, and that is that people don't know how much, or people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Correct.
And what do people want you to care about? They want you to care about them. So in every communication, you're communicating your care towards the other person, or your lack of care, or somewhere in between. But if you're communicating your care towards them, you are going to elicit a warm, fuzzy feeling inside, and the chances of you getting that caring back are greatly increased. So then we are on an upward movement, an upward scale, where we're caring about each other more and more, because we're consciously giving that communication of caring out along with the content of what we're communicating.
This is so fantastic, and many times the way to effectively communicate and show our love is not actually to use words, but to just listen.
That's
right?
true.
Right?
Absolutely.
And then listening to each other is a habit that we don't have.
Well,
for the most part.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know when we're talking that general, if that's true about in general. It may be or it may not be. I don't know, but certainly. The other quote is that God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we may listen twice as much as we speak.
Right. Well, my reason for bringing that part up is because this is what we commonly, or at least I commonly hear from my clients, right? That, he never listens. He never gets me. I am not heard. I want to be heard. These are pretty much some very common phrases that I'm hearing.
Yes.
Or, he's just judging me, or she's just judging me, or we're not there for each other. So this to me translates about the lack of listening skills, right? And then the other thing that I hear a lot is the issue of being corrected, right? So when the two people talk, one may assume the position that, I know better, or as a way of showing my love, I have to correct the other person.
Yes.
So we may all need, to have a loving approach and to have a loving, and kindness towards each other. However, by the method of communication we choose to do that, we may actually show the opposite, or we may not be able to relate to the other person's need of being listened to. Just listen and don't say anything. Right?
Well, I mean, yes, you can certainly listen and not say anything, and that's certainly better than listening and correcting the person. Yeah.
Exactly.
But the goal, of course, is to not just say nothing. The goal is to let the other person know that you've heard them.
Right, so that's step number 1. So when we don't say anything and allow time for the other person to say what they want to say, right? Even if they're using a tone that is not kind, even if they're using a tone that is not soft, it's not loving, but the tone that everybody uses, it's a representation of how they actually feel inside of them.
Of course, yeah.
So we need to recognize that and not make it a reflection of, not make it about us, but to understand it as a reflection of them.
Well, that's, yeah. But when people are talking to each other, especially if they're close, then they're communicating their feelings toward the other person, and it's hard for the other person to not take it personally.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
So if you're communicating to someone, or if, let's say someone is communicating to you, and there's a tone in their voice, there's an angry tone, there's a frustrated tone, or there's an attacking kind of tone, I think it's good to recognize that and to be able to respond to that rather than react.
Yeah, so we don't want to react, we want to listen and acknowledge.
And acknowledge. And so, if to acknowledge it means to find out more about it. So if you hear the person attacking you, then you say, you sound like you're angry with me, you sound like you're upset with me, tell me what it is that you think that I've done or not done that makes you feel that way. And if the person gives you examples, you can always refute the examples. But when you do, you're not really understanding the underlying feeling of the person, because and basically you're telling them that they're wrong for feeling what they're feeling.
Right, and that's one of the element that we don't want to have in our communication, to tell the person that they are wrong about how they're feeling, because what we feel is what we feel,
Right.
And then unless we are able to express that, and unless we are able to know that the other person is actually listening to us and is hearing us, we don't feel the security, the connectedness that we're looking for in terms of trusting the relationship, that when I talk, when I'm frustrated, when I'm upset, when I'm sad, when I don't know what's going on with me altogether, right? But I'm not feeling well. I know that this person who is in my life is listening to me. And then many times we see that just the fact of knowing that, gives a sense of security to the person with the frustration, with the feelings that they have.
And I'm going to say yes, and add a caveat to that. And the caveat is as if we're listening without judging.
Right.
So the key to listening is to listen to understand, rather than listen to agree or disagree.
Right.
You may agree with what they're saying. You may agree with part of what they're saying. You may disagree with all of what they're saying. But giving them the respect of listening, and because when you give the person the respect of listening and you're not judging them, even if you're feeling like you don't agree, you're giving the person the message that I don't think you're crazy.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
That your thoughts and your feelings matter to me, and that what you're saying matters to me, even though I have a different viewpoint.
Right. I mean, many times we do have different viewpoints, right? Every one of us look at a given situation, a similar situation, from different angles and from different perspectives, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. As a matter of fact, to a degree, that's healthy, right? However, just because somebody else has a different approach or a different perspective to a given situation, and we can't just go on and assume that they are wrong and not listen to how they feel about what's happening. And this is what's happening, within the families. People right now, they have lost jobs. They have been away from their buddy friends. They can't socialize like they used to. They can't go out for Friday night, gathering, or go to a movie, or many things. So then that, generates so many feelings, and then fear is really way up there, not knowing what can happen is way up there. Therefore, it's easy for the family members to turn into each other for comfort, right?
Right.
And then when that comfort doesn't is not experienced there, it creates other form of chaotic situations, which we can talk about them more after our commercial break.
So I wanted to say something before our break, which is when we come back, we're going to give some examples of communication.
Exactly.
And what can be positive communication and what can be negative communication to people, so that they can get a direct experience of what they're doing to make the relationship better.
And I'm looking forward to hear that.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Robert, and I'll be see you back after commercial break. Thank you. Welcome back from our commercial break. For those who just tuning into Heart to Heart, welcome. And to recap, for this our discussion is about listening to each other, healthy communication, positive and negative communication. For those of you who are listening to us live, we encourage you to call us and ask your questions. The phone number at the station is 951-922-3532. And we also would like to, invite you to go to our YouTube channel, which is heart-to-heart-online/YouTube. You can also listen to our archive programs that you can go to. I think it's SoundCloud KMET 1490. Go to playlist, they find Heart to Heart, and then click on that, and then you can listen to our prior programs. We thank you for joining us, and we thank you for giving us your hour and sharing that hour with us. And then now I'm inviting you all back to with Dr. Robert to talk about positive communication, negative communication, and how they can impact our lives during this pandemic era.
Exactly. So you had mentioned earlier that the topic of communication is something that you can learn about and improve on forever, because it's so much a part of who we are as human beings.
Exactly.
And
well, at least this is what I believe.
Well, I agree with you. I think it's impossible really not to communicate. Whether you're actually speaking words or not, we're still communicating. And many of you may have heard the idea that most of our communication is nonverbal. Most of our communication is body language. When we're talking, we're noticing that the other person is looking at us or not looking at us.
And looking at us at the corner of the eye.
Right. Or they're shaking their head negatively, or they're nodding their head positively, or their hands are on their hips, or their hands are folded,
or they're crossed,
or their arms are crossed. And it doesn't mean that we know specifically what they're feeling, but we do know that they're feeling and communicating something, always. And what we are is energy. There's actually now science has shown that nothing is solid. That at the atomic level, when we break it down into atoms, everything is energy, and nothing is solid. And that means that our bodies are energy, and that means that our energy since the energy is not localized in space, the energy is everywhere.
Right.
And people who are close to us pick up our energy, and we pick up their energy, and we can feel the other person's energy, and they can feel our energy. And so depending upon not just how much energy we have, but also what mood we're in, which is a change in our energy field, people are picking that up.
Exactly. I mean, I'm sure that we all have had the experience of going somewhere when as soon as you walk into the room, you feel, even though nobody's talking, but there is a certain level of heaviness there that,
Yes.
It is so heavily felt, and then you say, okay, what's going on? Nobody's talking, and then say, no, everything's fine. But, we know that when they say everything's fine, actually there is something going on, right?
Right.
So depending on how fine it's verbalized and what's the associated attitude with it, we can say that there has been an argument going on. We can say there has been sadness going on. We can say something has been going on, right?
Right.
All we have to do is just look at the people and then feel the heaviness of the negative energy, and we know that that's the communication at the moment.
And the reverse is also
and
true.
the reverse
right?
is also valid.
So if you're around somebody and their energy level is high and their energy level is positive, you can feel that. And just as you're saying, if it's the reverse, you can feel that too.
Right. I mean, imagine, you get up in the morning and then you smell the coffee, you smell the fresh toasted bread and everything. You automatically rush to the kitchen and you see somebody's smiling there and you say, good morning. And then, it's like, your day suddenly brightens up.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
But rather than you go in the kitchen and somebody's frowning, I have to get up every morning and make you guys all breakfast and things It's like that, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then that sets the mood for the entire day, pretty much.
Right. Right. So mostly we communicate with talking and listening, um, and that's notwithstanding all of the modern social media things that we have, where a lot of communication is posting. But I'm talking right now about, since we are at home, most of us, and home a lot, that we're going to be communicating a lot with the people around us in our family, and so we're talking today more about talking and listening communication, because those are the deeper levels of communication. When you're posting something, you may be posting that you're happy about something, or sad about something, or fearful about something, but you're still not having the back and forth interaction that you have when you're actually with someone, either on the phone or Skype or in person.
Right.
So there's three levels of three ways of communication, styles. I'm going to say, not ways. Three styles of communication. There's the collaborative, where we're all working together, and there's and the goal of collaborative is a shared understanding. I want to understand you. I want to understand what you're feeling, why you're feeling that way, and that my desire to understand you will be felt by you, it will be appreciated by you, and you will probably want to reciprocate. And so then you will have a desire to understand me, and now we're working to understand each other, and we're not working to correct each other. The second style is combative, and that we see a lot now in politics. We see a lot of combative communication, where we're listening simply to agree or disagree. And if we agree, then everything is rosy, and if we disagree, not only is it not rosy, we make the other person wrong and bad for disagreeing with us.
Yeah, and then I'm going to add to that, and that's to blame somebody.
To blame someone and to call them names even,
Right.
if you disagree with the way they're looking at
Yeah.
things.
So we say what's wrong with it and who's to blame for it, and then that's why we are satisfied.
Right, and that's combative communication, and we can see how it's not working in our country and in our world, because people are saying, if you disagree with me, that means that you're stupid, that means that you're my enemy, that means that sometimes that you should be wiped out, just the fact that you disagree with me.
Yeah.
And that's horrible, and it's certainly not what the foundation of democracy is about. It's about respecting other people's opinions and having other people respect ours, and trying to come to some shared understanding so that we can all live together as pleasantly and as lovingly as we can. And then the third style is cut-off communication, and that's for people who don't want to deal with anything unpleasant. So if you're talking to someone and they're changing the subject because you're talking about something that's bringing up negative feelings inside of them, they will change the subject, or they will just, as we say, vote with their feet and leave, because their goal is to keep everything on a pleasant or semi-pleasant note. And so when you're communicating with somebody and they're trying to change the subject because they're uncomfortable with it, you are dealing with someone who isn't working for shared understanding.
Exactly.
You're working for someone who just wants to make themselves feel okay all the time.
Right. So within this situation, we want to see primarily collaborative form of communication.
Correct.
However, I think it's also important to, we can provide, our listeners with more of examples about what is cut-off communication look like. Because, for example, we know that it's easy for everybody to go to their rooms and shut the doors and only show up during mealtime or when the nature calls, right? And that's when they can see brief contact with each other, like maybe not even a minute, and then everybody gets disappeared because that way, they believe that there is a sense of safety there. Nobody's attacking anybody, nobody's targeting anybody, nobody's picking on somebody, nobody's having a request or a demand on somebody, right?
Yes.
So family members who primarily don't have the type of collaborative communication style, or they feel like they're trying to avoid blaming each other or to be blamed, they may actually choose the cutoff form of communication, right?
Right.
And then so I just gave some examples of how that can happen, and that's what I'm hearing also from my clients, that everybody's they go into their own rooms and shut the door, and so nobody wants to hear anybody else saying something. And the minute somebody calls or they see each other in the kitchen area or the living room area, they try to do whatever they have to do so quickly and go back again to their own spot so that they don't become target. So that's such a difficult experience to have every day.
It is. And so let me just say, one of the big questions I think that people ask is, what do I do with someone? Often it's a child, it's one of their children, but it doesn't have to be. It can be a spouse, where the person is so defensive that when you try and communicate with them, they are listening for the attack, so that they're defensive, and then when they hear you talking, they're reading into it something that's negative or attacking, even though you don't wish to communicate that, and you're doing your best not to communicate that. And that is, unfortunately, it's a common scenario.
Yeah.
Where we have people in our lives who are very, very defensive. And it's important to understand the nature of defensiveness. And defensiveness means that the person has many sensitivities, probably as a result of what they observed growing up, or messages that they got about themselves, where they don't feel good about themselves. So they feel like anyone that's going to be making a comment about them is going to be criticizing them and making them feel bad about themselves, generally because they've had those experiences earlier on in their life.
Right. So that they just pick up the habit, right? They try based on their habits,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And they think that's the normal way of talking to each other, addressing each other, sharing what's going on with each other. So which is very much limited, very much disconnected. There is no profit in it, and it is becoming more dividing and dividing every day. I remember a client of mine was saying that her brother, who was a few years younger than she is, actually, since this situation started, he only goes to his room, right, and kind of locks up himself, goes into the laptop, right, or iPad or iPhone, and he can stay there for 8 hours straight forward, and only to come out of his room just to eat something and again run back to that, right? And when she checked on him to see what's going on, he wasn't doing anything, bad or anything, or he wasn't really looking at anything negative or anything. That was his way of disconnecting himself from interacting with the rest of the family member.
And why was he doing that?
Well, because the expectation that he had, the expectation that was imposed on him, like just because children are home, let's say we're talking about teenagers, right? It doesn't mean that they have to do extra chores. It doesn't mean that they have to pick up the tab for the parents who are busy, or just to like parents cannot be the school principal. Parents cannot be, many of what the children respond to outside home. But some parents have, started to have more of a rigid, more of a harsh, more of a kind of authoritarian form of interaction with their kids as a way of disciplining them or making sure that they follow the same routine. And that's been assumed by them that that's how the kids have been treated.
So I think we're going to have a break now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when we come back, let's talk about how you can respond to somebody when they've cut off from you or when they're combative with you. Because I think that's important.
Yeah, thank you. So we see you back, after our commercial break in 3 minutes. Welcome back. You're listening live to Heart. Our program aims to help you understand and to become your loving self. Dr. Mitra and Dr. Robert are here, and we just came back from our commercial break. And welcome if you're just tuning in. And to recap, our discussion today is about positive and negative form of communication among family members during this difficult time. And we would like for you to call us 951-922-3532. You can also contact us via our private contact information, which they are on our homepage at KMET. And then I would like to invite you to visit our YouTube at heart-2-heart.online/YouTube. And so Dr. Robert, we were talking about when people isolate themselves, what's going to happen. And I just remember something non-related which I would like to share. Our heart-to-heart logo is 2 hearts, right?
Right.
I'm actually wearing that necklace today.
Oh, yes, you are.
Right.
Yes, you are.
So I want to say that that's not a made-up thing. That's actually real. It's a necklace that I have. I actually bought this necklace when I was 14 years old.
Oh.
Right? And somehow that's one of the pieces of jewelry that I kept it all this time, and I just had kind of a spiritual connection to it, and never knew that someday this necklace, this pendant is gonna be, a logo for our show. I never knew I'm gonna have a show like this, right?
Beautiful.
So thank you. So I'm glad that this is really a historical thing. I'm old, so I can say it's historical thing. It's an antique piece that I have. It's 2 parts connected together, and that's how the name of the show became. Also, when it became Heart to Heart, we decided to use this as our logo. Right?
Absolutely.
Right. So.
Thanks for sharing
Oh,
that.
sure.
And we were talking about communication,
Right.
and anyone who saw you or listened to you talking about that, you were communicating your love and your joy,
Yes.
and your energy reflected that.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
absolutely.
No, I just wanted to, everything we say here is genuinely coming from our heart, our experiences, and the love that we have to share what we know in order to improve the quality of life.
Right.
So even our logo is a reflection of us. It's a reflection of who we are, and it's not a made-up thing. It's actually things that belongs to us, and we're sharing that
Right.
with everybody who's listening to us.
Exactly. So right before the break, I mentioned that I'd like to talk a little bit now about how you communicate with somebody who has a cutoff style, or somebody who is trying to has a combative style, right? So they're trying to be right, and what you want, of course, is a collaborative style where you're both talking about things so that you could share ideas and information and learn more about each other, as well as learn about particular topics that each of you may know about. And one thing about people who are cut off or defensive is that if you talk to them directly about what they're doing, about the fact that they're cutting off or that they're being defensive, they're probably going to go more into their shell.
Right. I like what you said here, and I like to open that up a little bit. So you associated cutoff with defensiveness.
Correct.
Right. Okay.
Correct.
So that's a key point right there. We need to recognize that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So and combative is also defensiveness, right? Because combative is saying, is saying, I don't. There, there's an old expression. My mind is made up. Don't confuse me with facts.
Right.
Right. And so people who are combative are often not open, at least on the surface, they're not open to new facts because they've identified what they believe with who they are. So they think that because I believe this and this and this, if you say that I'm wrong about this and this and this, or even about just one thing, that is an attack on myself. That you're saying that I'm wrong, not just my ideas are wrong, but that I'm wrong. And then of course I can't allow you to make me wrong because my self-esteem is so tied up in my feeling like I'm smart and that I'm competent and I'm good and all of that. And if you're telling me that one of my ideas is wrong, you're attacking my self-esteem and therefore I can't tolerate it. And it's important to recognize that whenever somebody is defensive with you, it's because they are feeling like they're being attacked at a very basic level. Even though it isn't accurate, that's how they're feeling, and so they start to assert themselves and even become negative and attacking themselves in order to protect their self-esteem. So what we can do with that is we can know that's what they're doing, and not fall into the trap of giving them something to argue against.
Right.
So what we can do is we can acknowledge that they feel that way, and we can, and then once we say that, okay, so this is the way you see it, this is the way you feel, and I don't see it that way, but if you're not interested in how I see it, I won't share with you. I just won't share it with you, and that's okay. I don't need to share with you. But if you are interested in what I have to say, I'll simply say my view.
And that's such an important point to remember, because once we put that, space, safe space, out there to the other person, you can agree or disagree, and that's okay to do that. Maybe at the moment the person is not ready to say something. However, that stays with people unconsciously. And the minute they feel okay, it's okay for me to go and say something, they will do that.
Right. Right. So cutoff style communication and combative are with people who are struggling internally to know themselves and to protect themselves. So now, if you're dealing with, let's say, a child, and that child has a cutoff style of communication, it's going to be challenging because that child is feeling very, very vulnerable, and they feel as though they need to cut off because they're afraid that you're going to say something negative to them that's going to make them feel bad. Now, this may be totally subconscious for them. They're not going to say that, so you don't want to say that to them, because it's too deep an interpretation.
It could be also based on experience.
What do you mean?
Like maybe they actually did experience that.
Well, even if they've experienced it, they may not. They're acting as though that's going to happen again.
Right.
Yes, yeah. So what you can do with somebody who's cut off is you can say, I want to share some of my thoughts with you, and share and share the thoughts not about them but about somebody else or about something else, and just say, there's some things that have been going on with me that I'd like to share, and try to open up a conversation with them where it's safer for them, so that they can talk about something that isn't so scary for them, which is themselves. So that's one way, and again, this is not ubiquitous and it's going to work in every situation, but that's one way of trying to get through to somebody, is to try to find a topic that you can share about with them that you believe isn't going to be dangerous to them.
Right.
You know, or to say, let's say with a child, you know, somebody who's 10 to 15 years old, to find out what their interests are, and to connect at that level.
Right, which is also that, you know, it's not as easy as, you know, we're saying it. I mean, it needs to be practiced, it needs to be understood. And so primarily we see that when children, you know, teenagers, younger or even older, they kind of cut off both physically, emotionally, and conversationally, and they go into their own spot and hide themselves. It's because of the lack of sense of safety that they have with their loved ones. Being criticized for their goals, for example. I mean, I know that parents sit down and they talk to their teenagers and say, so tell us, you know, what have you decided what you want to do with your future, right? And then, well, you know, a teenager may have different ideas, but realistically, they don't know what they want to do in the future, right? They are at the place where they need to explore, understand, go to college, take different courses, experience many things before they can really decide for themselves. And then parents have the expectations that their kids should know what they want to do, you know, and then so I have seen parents criticizing their children, you know, so and so have decided to do this and you still don't know what you want to do. So teenagers in particular stay away from those kind of conversations.
Right.
Or if they believe that's going to be the norm of conversation every time they show up at the living room, so they're just not going to show up.
So one thing that makes conversations more collaborative is for you to talk about what you want versus what you don't want.
Right.
When you're talking about criticizing, we criticize because we're seeing something that we don't want. But often we criticize and we don't include what we do want.
Right.
And with somebody who is defensive, somebody who has a cut-off style or combative style, if you talk about what you don't want, they're going to rely on their defenses, they're going to cut off more, or they're going to be more combative. Whereas if you talk about what you do want, and you say, and you talk about yourself, then they're going to be able to put their defenses down. You know, I want to feel free to talk to you. I want
Right.
I want to feel safe to talk with you. I want to feel good about our conversations.
And some of the guilt-laden conversations that I have seen between parents and their teenagers is that, you know, I'm doing all this work so that you can become somebody, you know, or you should have known this by now already, right? So those are the expectations that we have as parents, some of us, and then it doesn't mean that these are what our kids want to do, right?
And you use the word that I think of as the word that is one of the words that's most damaging
Right.
in relationships. You know what that word is?
Right. You tell me.
Should.
Should. Yes. Yeah.
Should. And
Yeah.
and in psychology and therapy, when I'm working with someone, I say, did that person should on you?
Yes.
Or are you shoulding on them?
Yeah.
Right? Because that's a very, very damaging word, because it puts you in a position where you're letting people know that you think you know better, and that you're in a one-up position and they're in a one-down position, because they're telling you who you should be, how you should behave, how you should feel,
How you should think.
and how you should think, and it's very easy for people to get defensive when they're shitting on you.
Right, and that's one of the elements of actually self-esteem, right? That shooting can definitely damage a youngster, you know, sense of self-esteem, and feeling bad about themselves,
Right.
because they didn't meet the expectation of variety of shoulds that parents put on them.
Right. So one thing we can do with people is ask them open-ended questions without telling them our feelings about it. You know, well, this is how you handled it, and how did it work out, and are you happy with the way you handled it? And if you're not, what are some other ways you might have been able to handle it? And if they don't know, then they can say, I don't know, and then you can say, well, I have a few ideas if you'd like to hear them. Because if they say no, not really, then you stop at that point.
Exactly. So we have been talking about communication during pandemic area. Families are more close to each other, far more close, and there is a uncertain day. We don't know when this is going to be ending, right? So the more we educate ourselves about how to respond, talk to, listen to our loved ones and to each other, I think we're going to create a more loving environment, home environment, until we're all ready to move back to what we left, behind. And who knows when things all go back to the opening, and I'm not going to say normal because I don't know what is the next normal, right? So I don't want to make a promise that we're all going to go back to what we used to have. Probably, maybe even it's going to be a better thing. And but one thing that for sure we can work on at this point is how we can talk to each other and how we can listen to each other so we can better understand each other.
And coming from a place of caring and love is the key to all positive communication.
Exactly. So thank you for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you next Friday. And please call us, tell us your opinion, share your ideas with us, ask questions. And until the next time we meet, all you need is love.
Love, love, love.
Have a wonderful morning.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.